Language was invented for it to be possible to lie, in contrast to music. And this comes through in the title track, actually, In Bed. The opening lyric is, I'll stay in bed till I find more words again. And then later on, we're staying in bed till I write a song again.
Absolutely. And it's funny you brought up Bed, that song, because when you were saying that quote, I was like, oh, this is exactly what happened when I was writing this song. This song obviously is about grief and the death of my friend.
And of course, we're talking about your dear friend and bandmate in We Are the Willows of 10 years, Leah Ottman, or
Yeah.
Lot, who was a friend of mine as well. There are tears on my book just here.
This song was kind of my attempt at convincing myself, like, you're going to be okay someday. Like, you will always be sad about this, but like, it won't hurt this much forever.
Yeah.
And I think there was a part of me that like wanted to hold on to that pain just to like feel like I was still close with her. And there was another part of me that knew that like I can't do that. Um and that moving on doesn't mean that I don't love her and I won't be thinking about her every day. Um and I kind of didn't know how to express that in words. And I tried in the last verse to be like, well, I think someday I'll be okay and I'll still love you and think of you all the time, but in happy ways instead of just like bursting into tears every 5 seconds. And so for me, I feel like kind of most fluent on cello.
Mm,
And so that's why I kind of like built like a cello ocean to
yeah,
express what I want to feel someday that I wasn't able to put into words.
absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that you use the metaphor of ocean because earlier in the song, when the lyric is, I'll stay in bed, to me, it's like there are these slow waves. It's like waves. It's also like steps. And there's just such an effort. Yeah, there's resilience. We're in the arena. So, yeah, I hear the ocean at the end. I also hear these waves from the beginning. You drew attention to the final verse, and it's so powerful, I think, what you're doing in that final verse. Going into it after the lyric, I'll rise, in a very authentic way. It's the woodwind, Addie's woodwind instruments. Obviously, rise, there's an ascent. And then I'll walk out the door. I'll smile at every pretty thing that I see. I'll smile knowing that you have forever changed me. The reason why it works, the reason why there's the magic there, or a reason I feel, is that through feeling the feeling, there is this deep honoring of the friend, the impact of the friend, the forever impact of the friend. And forever is a word which is both in this song and in the previous song, My Friend, which is, of course, for the same friend. That's really powerful, I think, the way in which you allow yourself to publicly feel the grief there, and through publicly feeling it and honoring it in your art in this authentic way, there's a deeper connection with your friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for the work that you've done and the honoring that you do um, with these final songs.
Thank you.
I love that her voice is on the record too.
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that interlude.
That felt, yeah, that felt important to have her on there.
All right, folks. This is it.
I was like, I don't know if this is okay to do, but it felt so important, and especially to have her like just like funny, snarky, bantering self.
Yeah. Let's go get ice cream later on. I wanted to eat ice cream all day yesterday, and it just seemed like the appropriate thing because it's 4th of July. And I didn't, and it was really heart-wrenching. So I woke up this morning. Do you ever wake up in the morning and you have like odd things in your mind, like ice cream? Always. That's what I did this morning. So I ice cream. Anyway, I don't want to tell you that. So
I'm very, very glad that you included that for all the reasons that you just highlighted, and also the fact that she's talking about waking up in the morning with ice cream on the mind. The content of what's being said does strangely fit thematically. Honoring and paying attention to one's actual dreams, as you are in the song Sepia, is what's being discussed there,
Yeah.
is what she's talking about.
Yeah.
So I just think that's beautiful.
I didn't even put it together like that, but that's true.
The last time we spoke, it was months ago. You said we're not friends anymore. You know that's not true.
I began by emphasizing this quality of self-assuredness that I hear in the music. And for me, it really comes through in assertions in my friend about the truth, about what you know to be the truth. In the previous EP, there were lyrics about truth, but they were quite different. I lied to you when I said I loved you. I'm not sorry, I'd say it again. I wanted it to be true. So there we were talking about that. We were reflecting on the yearning, and I was saying it's sad but striving. There's this desire for something to be true. You know what you want. You know you want it to be true, that you give love to yourself and to others in this generous way. That same desire, that striving, that commitment to doing that has grown. And now it reemerges in the song My Friend, where the lyric is, you said we're not friends anymore. You know that's not true. So here, the voice, the assertion of truth is beautifully a mirror image of what was happening in the previous EP. The truth is that there is love. The truth is that we are friends. There's this knowingness, and the knowingness is an embodied, deep knowingness, which is a loving as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
This time, you're my friend. You're my friend. You're my friend forever. I love you. I love you. I love you forever.
For me, that's the most powerful bit of the record and of the evolving bathtub sig sound. It's so compassionate too. The awareness of what you know deeply, of what your body knows. The love is an embodied emotion. And the feeling of that and the confident expression of your truth, which is a truth that is beyond you as well. Back to the idea of emergent strategy, the interdependence. You know that's not true. It's just that particular expression and what it reveals about human connection and interdependence, I think encapsulates the achievement of this record.
Yeah, thank you. This is kind of an example of a song of what I wish I had the courage to say, kind of like really speaking that truth and being like honest with people in that way. Yeah. So just working towards being that person.
The courage to speak the truth and to be loving, the courage to show up and to truly be loving as the contrast to the individual who maybe professes to abide by certain values, but then in close quarters, they can't hide that they don't.
Just trying to love you, just trying to love you, just trying to love you. I'm just trying to love you, just trying to love you, just trying to love you.
The radical courage to honor one's feelings, experience love, and then speak to and act in accordance with that, integrating all the aspects and living in integrity.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. I hear that that's very palpable, to use the word that Jordan used at the end of the previous interview. And breathing becomes important. That's definitely something that we need to recognize in Quarantine Dream. Take a breath, hold it in, let it out, and begin again.
Yes.
Do you have any reflections on the way in which the music is working alongside that message? The words are emphasizing the significance beyond words of the breath and of the body, the connection with the body that the breath can facilitate. I think it's really significant how the music sounds, as words, of course, are being used because they're the resources that we have to convey that message. Do you have any thoughts on how that sounds?
Yeah. And now that you bring this up, I think this totally makes sense to what you were asking earlier about like how the body plays into this music. And I think I'm realizing now, like very much so, like we've been saying, words can only process so much and take you so far, and the rest just lives in your body. You were talking about meditating a lot this year, and that's something I've really been trying and really not succeeding at, but I like can't sit still to do it. But just like remembering to like really take deep breaths has been helpful for me, of working through that anxiety and like fear and sadness and anger and loss. I think there's so much that our bodies hold on to and know how to process through the body.
Yep, the body keeps score, Bessel van der Kolk.
Yes, I haven't read that yet, but I've been meaning to.
Yeah, you will love it, I think.
Take a breath, hold it in, let it out, and begin again.
Something that's been striking me more and more in the last year and a half is how caught up in dualism Western culture is the artificial mind-body divide. We've been talking about connection, the connection with one's body, being present in one's body. In Pima Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart, there's a lot of focus on how significant the breath is. I do Wim Hof breathing as well. I found, if anyone's familiar with the Wim Hof method, activate your potential, transcend your limits. I became aware of Wim Hof through Chance York, a rapper and now a wellness coach. Chance York Connected, check that out, viewers. But the Wim Hof breathing method is a way of harnessing the autonomic nervous system, which Bessel van der Kolk writes about. The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system in the body keeps the score. Activating different systems within the body through conscious use of the breath. It has such an important, it sounds so simple. It sounds like there must be something more to it than that. There's a Wim Hof app, which you can use. And through conscious breath work, especially when taken to the extreme of Wim Hof, the breath is so powerful, and rhythm too. Shifting back to music, is that something that you're recognizing in general and perhaps exploring in this context?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this year has been a really important lesson for me in expanding my capacity for discomfort. And breath is kind of the only way to do that, I've found, of just like really sitting with the discomfort, whether it's like being alone or grieving or being annoyed at someone, or after George Floyd was murdered this summer too, that was a time where I really had to lean into my discomfort of like recognizing like, oh, I'm part of the problem, instead of reacting to things, just like really taking a moment to like breathe, pause down, like how can you respond thoughtfully after like listening and thinking and really pausing instead of just like reacting right away.
All right, folks. This is it.
Could you talk about the instrumentation and the production of that interlude and how my friend kind of emerges from that soundscape?
Yeah. So it felt important to have an interlude for a lot of reasons. This EP feels very much like two halves that somehow fit together in my mind, but like thematically not really. So I wanted to just have like a huge seamless kind of transition from Quarantine Dream into My Friend. And actually it kind of started off as an accident where we had recorded all of Quarantine Dream, and there was like clarinet and guitar and kind of the humming that was all part of Quarantine Dream. And there was like when we sent the files over to Holly, there was like a mix up, and so there was just like this break after Begin Again where it was just kind of clarinet. And I was like, oh, that sounds so cool, like that was not supposed to happen, but like, wow, I really love that. And so I decided to kind of chop the song there and have that transition kind of act as the interlude transition. So a happy accident.
Yeah, these two sides of the EP, the first two songs and the last two songs, do fit together in this beautiful way, I think. And of course, there's been so much loss globally.
Yeah.
And that is part of our quarantine, of many people's quarantine experience. I think it's powerful that you don't attempt to separate these two aspects of your experience of 2020 into 2021, because again, those two components, the being alone in quarantine and experiencing grief and not being able to experience grief collectively with the communities that we would otherwise be with is certainly something which a lot of people can relate to.
And I think especially like Quarantine Dream was also written in like April of last year, where it was early on, and just kind of like, oh wow, like a very, very privileged thought of like, this is great to like not have to work for a month. Like this is just gonna last for a month and I get to like live my best life. And obviously that kind of like gets explored throughout the song, and about how that's not really how it works. And
That's just the first verse, of course. But
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But kind of, I know myself and like a lot of my friends, when everything kind of shut down, were kind of feeling that of, and then reality kind of hit of like, oh, this is serious, this is horrible. Not that we weren't taking it seriously, but you know, just kind of like, oh, this is kind of a nice break to not be working like 15 hours a day, or X, Y, and Z. Like, as shitty as it is to admit that that was like my initial reaction to hearing about the country stopping because of a pandemic, like I think that's also important to acknowledge. Like, yeah, that was I am privileged, and that was kind of my first reaction to this.
Yeah.
And then like coming to terms with like, oh, there's so much loss for every single person that comes along with this.
You're my friend.
Focusing on the first half of the EP, and again, drawing a contrast, looking at the evolution from the first EP, we were recognizing lots of moments before where Brent's vocal would come in, the harmonies would come in at significant moments, the songs would kind of enact and celebrate. The magic of you showing up in such a way and honoring something which is emerging just from you, and doing that within community and allowing it to emerge in a way that is beautifully other and more than what could have emerged just from you. It's something that we were recognizing before. And I think that the way in which that continues with a difference in the opening track, Sepia, is really interesting. So I'm thinking here, for example, of how your vocal is in synchrony with your guitar in "And Everything I See Is Sepia." Your guitar part and your vocal melody, there's a wonderful interplay between those two.
I think generally when I write music, I like to contrast lyrics with like more upbeat rhythms or chords and things like that. And so I think that's what's happening in Sepia.
Yeah, exactly. With the lyric about the end of the world, the vocal delivery there is at the beginning of the song, setting a tone which is much more playful than one might expect, in a way that really works, I think. And I can sense that as a new component of Bathtub Sig, which is there on a record, which obviously there's no way in which there would not be sadness on this EP, but that component is a new component which I can sense will stay, and I really like it. I referenced Swear to God as a song that was beyond Old Light, and of course it was a band song, and it's not on this EP. Can we expect a return of full band Bathtub Sig at some point?
Yes, I've actually had a full length done and ready to go for over a year now.
I'm glad I asked. Does it have Champagne song on it?
It does, and I am really pumped about it, and I'm hopefully going to put that out at the end of summer, maybe August or so. Yeah.
That is very much not a bummer. Referencing, of course, All Bummer No Summer. I'm excited to hear that a new EP, a third EP, will be emerging soon. And I would love to have you back to the city, whether it's in this form or whether we're at MCN6 TV station or whatever it is, to talk about that when it
Yes,
emerges.
yes, and it's actually a full length.
It's a
And
full length. Oh, wow.
I'll let you know when it comes out.
Yeah, excellent. I'm so glad that we got that information in, and that viewers who are maybe discovering Bathtub Sig for the first time know that there is an album on the horizon.
Exactly. And that everyone gets to go read Octavia Butler, An Emergent Strategy now.
Yeah, and the Bobby Keeps the Score, and the Wim Hof method.
Yeah. I'm gonna email you and ask for those book titles again.
Yeah, I feel that the relationship between wellness and music is something which is of its own accord emerging in these new Back to the City interviews, and is also something that I'm writing a book about. So I don't know what's coming first, the chicken or the egg, but it seems the break from there being live shows, the disruption of our relationship with music has, certainly for me, and I gather for many other people too, led to reflection on what music is and what music does. If we're thinking about attunement, like the idea of attunement, and we're talking about the body and talking about interpersonal relations, being attuned is a term that comes up a lot. That's musical lexicon. It's got, tune in it. Yeah. And of course, when musicians are performing together in time, there's just something really, I think, significant in terms of well-being about what's going on there. And thank you very much for being a part of that ongoing exploration. In fact, I would like to reference this interview in said book, if that's okay.
I would love that. Go for it.
Yesterday we thought about the amygdala as the smoke detector of the brain. If the amygdala senses a threat, it sends one of those instant messages, recruiting the stress hormone system and the autonomic nervous system. Now, we're going to hear a lot about the autonomic nervous system on Into the Field. It's going to be really important. We'll come back to it with this book. Back to animals. He focuses on monkeys to teach us about 3 levels of safety. This first monkey just here is relying on the social engagement system. An alarmed monkey signals danger and calls for help. If no one responds to our call for help, the threat increases and the older limbic brain jumps in. That's where the amygdala is, the smoke detector. When the smoke detectors of the brain malfunction, people no longer run when they should be trying to escape, or fight back when they should be defending themselves. The sympathetic nervous system takes over, mobilizing muscles, heart and lungs for fight or flight. Accelerate, expend energy. So a person is attempting to return, let's say, from the field of battle. They want to reconnect to society, but trauma has left an imprint in the limbic brain. If we understand that traumatized children and adults get stuck in fight, flight, or in chronic shutdown, how do we help them to deactivate these defensive maneuvers that once ensured their survival? Bessel shares that there are 2 branches to the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic, which acts as the body's accelerator, and the parasympathetic, which serves as its brake. There's a simple way to experience these 2 systems for yourself. Whenever you take a deep breath, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, the with emotions nervous system. The resulting burst of adrenaline speeds up your heart, which explains why many athletes take a few short, deep breaths before starting competition. Exhaling, in turn, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which slows down the heart. Looking forward to talking about Wim Hof soon. If you take a yoga or a meditation class, your instructor will probably urge you to pay particular attention to the exhalation, since deep, long breaths out help calm you down. For Bessel, well-being is about stimulating the growth of synchronicity between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. That's interesting. We'll come back to that. Synchronicity.